Miriam Rizzuto, UNH Journalism senior, decided to start a blog in which she detailed her personal mental health struggles. She transformed her blog into more of a documentation of how she's been doing with the coronavirus pandemic over the past couple of months and how she was able to get through those difficult moments.
Writing was always really like therapeutic for me, and it wasn't something I'd done in a while, and I had just recently gotten really open about my mental health stuff. Like, it wasn't something I had ever really talked about until the beginning of my sophomore year of college. So yeah, last fall quarantine hit, and I just like started writing, I guess, because I was bored, and I had always like thought about starting a blog, but I'm like, I don't know what I would write about. So I sat down and I was like, okay, I'm gonna start writing some stuff. And if you read I don't know how far back you went, but if you read like my earliest posts, they're very different than my more recent ones. In the beginning, I was kind of talking about like, hey, mental health isn't great during quarantine. Like, I know it's rough for people. Here's some things you can do. And then as I started writing, I started getting like a lot of positive feedback from people that I hadn't expected. And they were like, hey, can you write about this? And then I just started going more into detail about my personal experiences, and people seemed to respond really well to that. And it was also really good for me.
Miriam noted how writing is somewhat of a therapeutic activity for her when she's feeling particularly overwhelmed.
I try to set aside at least 15 minutes a day to write because I notice that my mental health is so much better when I am writing, because there's something, because in my mind, like, I have anxiety and my thoughts are all over the place and they're just spiraling all the time, and it's like I have 50 tabs open in my brain at all times.
Miriam mentioned how she would like to be in a little bit of a better place, but she recognizes all of the progress that she's made in the last year.
Currently, I'm not ideally where I would like to be, but I do recognize that I'm not as bad as I was, and I genuinely don't think I will ever be back to that point, and that makes me feel really good. About a year ago, I attempted suicide, and it was in November of last year, so that's really messing with me right now, because it's like the anniversary of that. So I've been actually talking to my psychiatrist about this, and I'm gonna turn it into like a positive kind of thing by I'm gonna celebrate it as like a second birthday kind of thing. Like, I got a second chance at life. I have a phoenix tattoo on my arm that I got like a couple weeks later, and it's just like it, I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory. It's like I came back from that. I'm still here. I said I feel like I got a second chance, and I feel like there was a reason for that, and because of that, I'm not going to take life for granted anymore.
Miriam's story is an example of how students really struggle on campus with their mental health, especially during the coronavirus pandemic. Through this past year, Miriam has shown her resilience and strength, and she recognizes now that she has made some progress, although she might not always feel like it every day. In addition to students, staff and professors have also detailed how they have been adjusting to the coronavirus pandemic and how to balance work and personal life. Professor Cliff Brown, a sociology professor here at UNH, explained how he has been dealing with the coronavirus pandemic.
It's been difficult. I've tried to focus on the things that are easy to do, like taking long walks and stuff like that. When it was warmer, I was able to garden. My partner and I like gardening a lot, and she's also a sociology professor. So, that's another kind of complication, is that when we're together, we're it's easy to fall into talking about work because we work in the same department. We teach a lot of the same students and stuff. But gardening, I'd say walking, I play music, and so I enjoy that as well. And the weekends have been good, I have to say. I've been trying really hard to unplug during the weekends and not do work stuff.
Roxanne Brown, the receptionist in the undergraduate office in the English department, explained how she and her coworkers have set schedules and times in which they will take breaks in order to prevent overworking.
What we have had to do is just become very religious at saying, okay, we're taking a break for lunch. My day starts at whatever time.
Roxanne recently was sick with a respiratory infection, and she explained how she was quite overwhelmed with work responsibilities while she was recovering from her illness.
I think the worst thing that happened to me was I got sick, not with COVID, but I went down, and I went down hard for about 3 weeks, which for me was very difficult because in order for me to get better, I had to stay flat. I had a respiratory infection, and I'm like, oh, but I have to check my email, you know? And I realized that I just couldn't, because even if I was trying to work through my illness, it wouldn't have been proficient work. You know what I mean? I was running a fever. I was just a mess. It looked like COVID. It sounded like COVID. Everybody thought it was COVID, but it wasn't.
She also mentioned how going outside or going for a walk on the nearby Hampton Beach really helps her clear her mind. She also mentioned how the pandemic has been a really difficult time for many different people, but there's certain ways that we can choose to personally manage this time.
I live in Hampton, so I'm not too far from the ocean. And you know, I have a great deck and a couple of crazy cats. I think the lesson learned here for all of us in this pandemic is, even though we can't fix it, we can definitely learn to manage it in our own personal lives.
Finally, Roxanne mentioned how she's in the high-risk age bracket and she's been trying to avoid going out in public.
In the high risk bracket due to my age, and I have asthma, and obviously I have respiratory conditions. And so for me to be out in grocery shopping or in a restaurant or going to a venue for an event or would be detrimental to my own health.
Sue Hertz, English professor here at UNH, also emphasized the importance of going outside. She mentioned how she's had a moment in the last couple of months where she really recognized the little things.
For me, it's just movement. It's just going outside and moving and seeing there's still beauty in the world. I remember last spring, you know, we'd been in lockdown and it was a struggle for all of us. And I went early to one of the local garden centers and just was so delighted to be surrounded by all these gorgeous plants. And it's a reminder that the world still spins and beauty still exists and we will get back to normal. So what I try and do is just find avenues to do that. I mean, I'm an avid cyclist. I walk. I just had a hip replacement, so I'm not doing any cycling right now. But I mean, I still get out and I walk every day. I have a dog. We walk the dog. I'm looking forward to ski season. Just anything to be outside. And I always feel better outside anyway. I mean, even before the pandemic, but I think it's just being outside.
Professor Hertz explained how coming back to campus is actually quite lonely in the sense that she's not able to see many of her fellow faculty members.
I think the sadness comes when we're at school because it's just a fraction of what it usually is. I mean, there's a fraction of the students, a fraction of the faculty, there's just not the same energy you get when you have, students locked onto their computers teaching. And then at first it was like my first few weeks back, I couldn't find another faculty member. I was like, where is everybody? Mm-hmm. And, there's just not, the fun part about work, the fun part about going to an office is your colleagues, and your students and, talking. And it's some of the stuff that happens outside the classroom. It's the brainstorming. I really missed that.
Although the last couple of months arriving back to the UNH campus have proven to be quite a challenge, the UNH community has come up with ways to make this semester as normal as it possibly can be. Reporting from the UNH campus, my name is Melanie Tem. Thank you for watching.